Congratulations. You're the first to survive the audition.
Welcome to the Mad Max Minute, where we're up to our armpits in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, 1 minute at a time. I'm Rick.
And I'm Julia.
And today we're talking about minute 14, which begins with Max taking several jabs at Ironbar, and it ends with Aunty talking about all the work she's put into Bartertown. And another piece of work, we've got Molly Bailen joining us once again from the Cabin Minute cast.
Hey guys.
Hey, Molly.
Welcome back.
Yay. Happy to be back.
We ended Monday's episode with Max freeing himself from this catch-all control pole device that Ironbar had slipped around his neck. And now that he's free, Max begins off today's episode by grabbing the end of the catch-all pole and more or less jabbing it back into Ironbar's face. I mentioned on Monday this idea of a Three Stooges slapstick style violence that's going on in this fight. This is definitely more of that, because Ironbar doesn't make any efforts to move the pole away from his face. He doesn't try to free the hand that is wrapped up in a bunch of cords that is grabbing onto the end of that pole. No, he just takes shot after shot to the face.
Yeah, he doesn't let go of it, which is an interesting move. I would have probably just let go at that point, but I don't know if he's trying to still control it somehow, or he feels like if he holds on to it that Max won't get a hold of the whole thing and then just like wholesale beat the crap out of him. Not quite sure. But yeah, he just pretty much, he just takes it to the face repeatedly.
Poor Ironbar, he's so stunned that he's forgetting the lesson that we all learned from Elsa to just let it go.
It's okay to let that pole drop on occasion.
After just pummeling this poor guy in the face, Max grabs the end of the catch pole and starts more or less dragging Ironbar around, and he drags him off towards the edge of the penthouse and just flings this poor guy off the edge of the penthouse, and he is just free as a bird.
Poor guy, my butt. He just jumps. There is absolutely no reason for this pole to be controlling him and causing him to be pushed off the penthouse. It's so goofy, which is a word that we have from time to time used to describe things in this movie, and this is an appropriate time. I like the parallel of the Three Stooges, because, again, that's exactly what this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm sure that when people have critiques of this movie, it's likely because of these types of moments, because it's a little funny, it's a little quirky, it's a little goofy. It doesn't entirely make sense in a realistic fight sort of way. But I don't know that it necessarily bugs me that it's not entirely realistic. It just kind of, I think, goes to show that he's a little dim, that the people around here are just a little, I think they're also showing vitality and capacity and intelligence in one very shining example, meaning Max, and Ironbar and the the other end of the bell curve, so to speak.
They're definitely not used to dealing with someone like Max. They're used to the everyday wastelander who's coming in with a couple of rabbit furs to trade for a bag of grain. Mm-hmm. And then Max comes up and they are wholly unprepared for dealing with him.
Yeah, very much so.
Having been thrown out of the penthouse, I guess we should probably give Ironbar his little IMDb time in the sun. Ironbar Basie is played by Angry Anderson. Gary Stephen Anderson was born on August 5th, 1947 in Melbourne, Victoria. He is an Australian rock singer-songwriter, television presenter, reporter, and actor. He has been the lead vocalist of the hard rock band Rose Tattoo since 1976. Anderson's first role on camera was as a senator's aide in 1983's At Last, Bulamankanka, the motion picture, which is a mouthful to say the least. Following Beyond Thunderdome, he did a TV movie in 1987 called Scuff the Sock, where he played a plasterer, and then more or less stepped away from television and movies until 2002, when he came back in front of the camera, appearing in movies and television over roughly 11 projects in the next 13 years.
Wow.
He has the distinction of being a member of the Order of Australia, that was awarded on Australia Day in 1993, which is the 26th of January, for his work as a youth advocate. He is very involved when it comes to raising money for youth programs and cancer research and all of that stuff. The rock historian Ian McFarlane describes him saying that over the course of a lengthy career, the gravel-throated vocalist has gone from attention-grabbing rock and roll bad boy to all-around Australian media star. McFarlane goes on to talk about the band, Rose Tattoo, as one of the most revered bands of all times. The Tats, as they're affectionately called, played peerless street-level heavy blues with an emphasis on slide guitar and strident lyric statements. Apparently, and I haven't run out to check all these, but Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, Keel, Nashville Pussy, Moto Sierra, Pud Spuke, Helen Schneider, and the Uruguayan band The Night's Night have covered Rose Tattoo songs. And on August 16th, 2006, they were inducted into the Australian Recording Industry Association's Hall of Fame.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's had a really impressive career.
He's a very serious musician.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool.
And like I said, he's also done a lot of charity work, a lot of fundraising, mostly for helping underprivileged children and promoting cancer awareness and raising money for people with cancer, because several original members of Rose Tattoo actually died of cancer.
Wow.
So it's something that's really important to him. His top 4 include Beyond Thunderdome. He did soundtrack work on Chopper from the year 2000 and The Time Guardian from 1987. And apparently he played someone very close to himself in a TV show that I don't know how to pronounce. It's spelled Housos. So I don't know if it's Housos or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't always know how to say things. I don't English good all the time. The IMDb trivia section is very clear to point out that Angry Anderson is in no way related to the actor Happy Anderson.
Oh, okay.
Eric Happy Anderson is most known for roles in 2017's Mindhunter, 2017's Bright, and 2014's The Nick.
Okay.
2 of them, not related. They're not 2 sides of one persona or anything like that. This isn't a Garth Brooks, Chris Gaines situation.
Does it talk about his sweet tats? Are those real? They look real.
You know, I didn't actually look up any information about his tattoos, but considering that the band he is the head of is called Rose Tattoo, I am willing to believe that some of those are absolutely real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I especially at this time, because this, and I live in a place where everybody's tattooed, and I know that's an exaggeration in what it sounds like, but really, I mean, there's a substantial part of the Portland population that is tattooed. And these seem completely contemporary, even though this is a movie that came out 30 years ago. And I know people were getting tattoos and that was like, ooh, you know, rock and roll, you know, bad boy kind of thing, you know, even back then. But these seem very contemporary. I find that very interesting that, you know, how well this is held up, even aesthetically.
So with Ironbar flung from the penthouse, Max turns, his knife still at the ready, and he sees Aunty pointing a crossbow at him. Aunty very calmly says, "Congratulations. You're the first to survive the audition." The fellas over at CinemaSins bring up a few good points here. They give 2 sins to the scene specifically, even though I don't really consider them sins. I more consider them legitimate plot questions. But they asked how many people have been brought up to this penthouse, and how is it that they were so bad at fighting that they were taken out by 2 inept guards, an old fat guy with no sense of depth, and basically a tool meant to contain small animals.
It's an excellent question.
Those were my questions too. I think that says something about the caliber of fighters that are in this area of the continent. This area of the continent seems really to be for traders, people who are subsistence living, and may not have time for recreational fighting. Mm-hmm. And then we have Max, who always has time for recreational fighting.
Yeah, and I think they're pointing out something that I think is somewhat inherent to these movies, in that they seem to, and Wes kind of feels that way to me too, where you have these very, not necessarily articulate, scholastic individuals or, you know, broad thinkers, because this is a time and in a space where that's not really valued, so to speak. cunning is not necessarily something in abundance. People are really just trying to subsist, and they're very isolated. And I feel like there isn't maybe the luxury to train in a martial art necessarily. So there's a kind of like raw, law of the street that's sort of taking place. And so I think even though this seems to be, at least from the initial couple of minutes that we've seen, there seems to be a lot of people coming through here. I think you're right. They're not necessarily coming in with high capacities. I think they're really just trying to get by, man. And I think what we've seen of Max so far, Max has got all kinds of tricks up his sleeve. He's got, in the cars that he drives, he's got all of these other little safety mechanisms because he's aware that someone's going to get the drop on him. In fact, someone did get the drop on him, which is why he's here to begin with, is that the pilot ended up and the little kid ended up jacking his stuff. So this seems to be something that, has happened to him enough times that he creates some backups for himself. And not everybody has probably gotten that lesson, or they're overconfident and they don't think that they need to do that, which I also think is part of the situation here with Aunty.
Oh, I can definitely imagine someone waltzing in from the wasteland. They've got size and they've got muscles, but they've also got a big ol' ego, so they think that they're amazing. So they try and throw their weight around. They get brought up to Aunty to audition for this proposition that she's got in mind, and then they summarily get brought low by probably just Ironbar himself. I think this fight would have gone very different if Ironbar had not been taken out at the very offset, and it had evolved into a situation where it was Max trying to fight Ironbar with these two other guards getting involved on the side. Because Max was able to take out 3 people very quickly, eliminating most of Auntie's fighting force. Like 75% of it.
Yeah, this is the best of the best for her. This is her Delta Force.
Jumping backwards a little bit till last minute when the Collector uses his gigantic battle axe, I'm thinking that no other contender had made it that far before.
Yeah.
Because if I remember correctly, looking back at my notes real quick, the Collector doesn't step in until Ironbar and the 2 other guards are taken out. So I think that was the first time that somebody had made it past Ironbar and the 2 other guards. So the Collector had to step in.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet for those other instances of this audition going down, the guard that really did not have the accuracy necessary to use a wrist-mounted crossbow probably was out of practice because Ironbar takes control of the situation so quickly anyway, because he's always in a position to get a drop on someone. You probably have these other dim-witted fighters that are brought up to the penthouse, think that Aunty is legitimately being nice to them, so they're picking out which piece of fruit to get when they get cold cocked by a blow to the back of the head.
Right. And these are real objects of wealth for this time. So I can also see where maybe less cautious people would get the drop on them,
I also wonder if anybody else besides the Collector is looking out for potential warriors to bring to Aunty. We think that there must be other people who fill that Collector role when the Collector's not actually doing it. Because, well, for one, he just walks away to take Max up to Aunty. So they can't just close the gate. I suppose they can, but we don't think that they do. So there must be other people who have opportunities to see every person who comes through. So is there competition between who is actually going to be the one that brings her the warrior who is going to prevail? And does the Collector, because he does bring her the one, does that make him more powerful?
I love that. He probably talks to all of his Collector staff, because I imagine there are more than just him. Like, he's the manager of the Collector team, and he probably sits them all down and he's got his clipboard and he's like, listen, if you see anyone that's really tough, bring him up to the penthouse. Aunty wants to talk to someone like that. And then whoever brings someone up gets a bonus. So this is the manager sniping the bonus from his workers.
Okay, this reminds me of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, where Veruca,
Yeah.
her father has got a whole factory of young women opening up candy bars. And as soon as one of the young women find a golden ticket, Veruca swoops in, takes the golden ticket, and then acts like she found the golden ticket and gets all excited. That's exactly what the collector is doing.
Yep.
Except that he actually did find the golden ticket. So it kind of makes it okay.
I mean, he had an unfair advantage because it seems like he's manning the desk in like a peak time. Like there's got to be certain points of the day where more people are coming into Bartertown than at others. Like if you've got a collector that works the night shift, like he probably doesn't get a huge line of people because everyone's like sleeping or off, at a camp somewhere. But during the thick of the day, that's when the collector proper sits down and he gets to check in all of those people.
Although there does have to be a second door that is large enough for vehicles and whatnot.
Yep.
So there must be another collector who is at the large door at peak hours. I think he had just as much of a chance of finding the one as the actual collector at the people door did.
Mm-hmm. And really, the fact that the collector actually ended up bringing Max up to Aunty is not because of anything the collector did, because he wanted to send Max away. Mm-hmm. Like, he thought nothing of this guy. Mm-hmm. And was perfectly content with sending him back into the wasteland.
Yeah, and to be fair, I feel like he did give... I mean, granted, nobody told him he was going to get, interviewed in this particular manner. But I do believe the collector's been fairly upfront about expectation here. And I think he did give him kind of a warning of, he's like, look, we're going to need 24 hours of your time. And he's like, initially Max is like, that's fair. And he's like, well, don't say that quite yet. You'll have to see, and I'm paraphrasing.
Sounds like a bargain. It's not.
Yeah. This seems like it's okay for you, but it's actually not really going to be okay for you. But, we'll bring you up and we'll see. So I don't feel like the collector has been deceptive as much. And I don't think Aunty is necessarily been very deceptive either. I think they've all been very straightforward about, this is what we want you to do. This is what this is. Yeah. We're going to lay it down for you. They haven't been, obfuscating the situation for him. So there is a little bit of integrity on their end, so to speak. A little.
It's mostly been lies of omission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they've told Max to keep his expectations in check, but they didn't tell him exactly why he should do so. And so Max is standing there after hearing Aunty say this thing about an audition, and he's looking at her, and he looks a little confused to me. There's like a little weird eye twitch, and he still has the knife up. You can tell that he's coursing with adrenaline from the fact that he was just attacked by 4 people, and he hasn't yet really come down from that, because it takes a little while for people to calm down once they've been throwing punches and tossing people out of penthouses.
Mm-hmm. And you can see that ramp up in his face for, I think, the rest of this minute and then some of the next minute. Yeah, it's not till minute 15 where he starts to come back down to normal.
Yeah, and I think Aunty can tell that he's still very much on edge, because she lowers her crossbow and holds up the pitcher of water, and she offers it back to him, says, drink. It's okay, as if to say, it's fine. It's not poisoned or anything like that. Mm-hmm. This was an audition. We weren't legitimately trying to murder you. Mm-hmm. We were only sort of trying to murder you.
It's only light murder. Yeah, in this moment, I was a little surprised that he's like, oh, okay. But I feel like everybody kind of stands down in this moment, and she has a very, warm kind affect that disarms him enough that he's like, okay. And then after he accepts the water, and we see Ironbar kind of climb back in.
Shocking everyone.
Right. With his upper arm strength, which is not evident upon cursory glance, but, hey, God bless. And, she kind of, when they go to look out the window, she kind of touches his arm. So there's this connection that she's making with him. She's a very warm character in this moment of like, here, it's okay. I'm offering you water. I'm going to touch you. Like, we're okay here. I'm going to now explain to you what this is and a little bit more about, what you've walked into.
When they asked for Tina Turner, this is what they paid for. This type of interaction here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, one thing that stood out to me as Aunty is lifting up that picture is the ring that she has on her index finger. Because A, it's huge.
Oh, yeah.
And B, it reminded me of a symbol, specifically an Egyptian symbol. Mm-hmm. So I went went on ancient.eu because they had a nice little article about Egyptian symbols. And the one that I had in mind is called an ankh, A-N-K-H, an ankh. It is a cross with a looped top, which besides the concept of life also symbolizes eternal life, the morning sun, the male and female principles, the heavens, and the earth. Its form embodies these concepts in its key-like shape. In carrying the ankh, one was holding the key to the secrets of existence, the union of opposites, male and female, earth and heaven, and the extension of earthly life to eternal, time to eternity, were all represented in the form of the looped cross. The symbol was so potent and so long-lived in Egyptian culture, dating from the early dynastic period in Egypt, circa 3150 to 2163 BCE, that it is really no surprise that it was appropriated by the Christian faith in the 4th century CE as a symbol for their god. That was all from the ancient.eu. You can check them out for their Egyptian symbols page. But I like the idea that one of Auntie's big symbols is that idea of life and opposites.
An eternal life, ruling in perpetuity.
Yeah, because as we're going to find out as she talks about the concept of Bartertown at the end of this minute going into Friday's minute, like this is her pride. And this is her joy, this place that she's built up. And as we see Ironbar climbing up from the side of the penthouse, I wonder if he knows that penthouse well enough that there are handholds that he's able to reach out and grab onto. But as Aunty leads Max over to the edge of her penthouse, she directs his focus to the world that they have around them. We get interrupted with a quick little shot of the collector who is recovering from his grievous injury, and he's staring at Aunty and Max. And when we were talking to Tom the other week, he said that in Pete's notes, because Pete wasn't able to join us that time, that the collector reminded Pete of Unkar Plutt from The Force Awakens. And in this shot specifically, I don't know if you've seen FX's Legion, but he kind of reminds me of the Shadow King as well.
I gotta check that out. I haven't seen that show.
Definitely do.
Okay.
It is a trip.
Ooh, cool.
And it's a great opportunity to see Matthew Crawley from Downton Abbey just play a very different role.
Nice. Nice. Wow. Yeah, that's all you needed to say. I'm highly intrigued. Yeah, I love that she's got this little speech here with him, all this I built up to my armpits and blood and, and it just tells me that civilizing people is a dirty business, And
she goes into this idea of all of the opposites that she's been able to shift from one state of being to the other. Where there was a desert, now there's a town. Where there's robbery, there's trade. Where there was despair, now there's hope. And she sums that all up by saying, it's civilization.
This idea of Auntie's accomplishments, that she has created a civilization here in this desert, made me wonder. It made me think about the compound dwellers from Road Warrior and how they were looking for the same thing. They wanted civilization, but all they ever found in the desert was robbery and despair. And that's what drove them. That was their motivation to leave. So I wonder how Road Warrior would have been different if Auntie was leading the group instead of Papagallo.
Yeah.
Auntie strikes me as a deal maker. Because that's what she's doing here with Max, and she's built up this whole idea of Bartertown around this idea of trade and equitable trade at that. So I imagine, and I really should not delve back into the what could have been different game, because I played that a lot during season 2. But all of those times we were talking about Humongous and Papagallo working together, I kind of feel like Auntie could have made that happen.
Yeah, I think Auntie is very interested in remaking a civilization. But I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit more on Friday, but I feel like what part of this discussion is with her and Max is Max is, of a similar age enough to her to understand what was left behind. And so she's trying to show him, look, we're rebuilding civilization. I'm somebody who is a trustworthy leader. I'm capable. Look what I built here. We had all of this pain coming out of the last, regime, so to speak. I'm bringing all this goodness to the land. There's almost this messianic message from her. Look what I've created. You can be a part of this. I've developed a rule of law, which again we'll go into a little bit more on Friday, which is they're trying to pervert a little bit, but she is somebody who's trying to lay down boundaries within a place that has no boundaries, which should, on cursory view, be very attractive to Max because he was somebody who was, upholding the law in his last life. And so he's really been a fish out of water in a place that has no law, so to speak. His values have been, the only thing that he's had to really kind of cling to with all of this.
What I like about this little speech that Aunty is giving Max, it's that you can tell already, and Aunty is going to get into it on Friday's Minute, but you can already tell at the onset that she cares very deeply about the time and effort that she has put into this project known as Bartertown. Mm-hmm. She strikes me as like an artist talking about artwork or a craftsman talking about their creation. Mm-hmm. There's a show on Netflix that we like to watch from time to time, and it's really short-lived, so it's not like we can watch a ton of it, but it's a show all about the most amazing houses in the world, and these hosts, they sit down with these architects, and to hear the architects talk about all of the effort and the time and the vision that went into some of these creations, I feel like it's not exactly the same, but it's more or less the same. The fact that even though Aunty is up to her armpits in blood and that she has created something magnificent where there was nothing before.
Right.
And I think we might have said this before. I don't know if we've said it before, but there's this idea of scavengers versus creators in the Wasteland. And we saw a lot of scavengers in the second movie. Mm-hmm. And as we move on to the compound dwellers and to Bartertown and later on to Fury Road, the people that are really making steps forward in this world are the people that are creating new things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely a big theme of that. And how do you recreate? Mm-hmm. Because you have such a, we had this monumental civilization, right? And now we don't. So what did we learn from all that? How are we going to create as a result of that? I think that's a big theme in this week's episodes.
Especially the idea of, are we really learning from what was built before, or are we just recreating what was there before?
Right. Do we even know how to go beyond that? Yeah.
Nice.
No, seriously though. I mean, and again, I think later on down the road in this movie, I think that gets dealt with as a third element to be discussed. But in this moment, yeah, I don't know that they know how to rebuild. Honestly, they have, and it must be very weird for them because they have all of these tools and technologies, and they're still inhabiting what are all these leftover resources. And do we even have the capacity to upkeep, because we had infrastructures before and we don't have them anymore. So this I think is just showing, the attractiveness of what was before, and in Aunty trying to show how she has rebuilt something. She's a fine cultured lady rebuilding civilization.
I've seen in certain places the idea that Max represents a man who is clinging to the past because he's in pain, and Aunty is a woman clinging to the past because she's almost doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. Like she's recreating her civilization in the image of the civilization that came before.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's very well said.
Although she does have one major difference between the civilization that was before. I mean, Dr. Dealgood is going to get into it when he gets into his grand speech once we actually get into Thunderdome, but that's a whole other thing to happen in a completely different week. As for us, we've pretty much run our course on minute 14 here, so we are going to put a pin in this. We're going to pick up with Aunty Entity continuing to talk about Bartertown on Friday. So come back and join us for that because it's gonna be good. The Mad Max Minute podcast is a fan project by Rick and Julia Ingham.
The Mad Max franchise was created by George Miller and Byron Kennedy, is presented by Kennedy Miller Mitchell Productions, and distributed by Warner Brothers.
Mad Max Minute is produced and edited by Rick Ingham. Our opening music is Verdi's Dies Irae by Daniel Batista of danielbatista.com, and our outro music is We Don't Need Another Hero by MilitiaVox of militiavox.com.
Our home on the internet is madmaxminute.com. You can follow us on Twitter at madmaxminute, like us on Facebook by searching for Mad Max Minute, and join our Facebook listener group, Mad Max Minute Beyond Microphone.
If you'd like to support the podcast, visit madmaxminute.com, where you can check out our TeePublic storefront by clicking the store link, join our Patreon by clicking the support link, or make a one-time donation by clicking the donate link.
Thank you for joining us for minute 14 of Beyond Thunderdome. We'll see you next time.
Every